Happy Sabbath. My pleasure to be here. And for a couple of days I've been talking to you about your physical health. Now I want to talk to you about your spiritual health. Our Bible text for today was that God loveth a cheerful giver. So I want to talk about the blessings of giving, the blessings of sharing. God has given to us, and it's our privilege to give back to Him in relationship to how He has given to us. And I want to tell you a story that would help our spiritual health to realize just how much God has done for us, how much He is willing to do for us. I've never been afraid to share and give in my married life. 5 times I have completely walked out on everything I had, given it away, and went free with no burden other than to do the Lord's work. And for instance, I'll just tell you one of those occasions. I had my wife and 8 children. We owned a 403-acre farm up in northern New York State in the Adirondack Mountains. And my wife homeschooled my kids there for 8 years. And the time came, we decided we wanted to work for the Lord. Probably everything I owned was worth the land and tractors and other machinery, furniture, house, everything was probably worth about $350,000. Like a madman, I had an auction in one day and sold everything I owned. We walked out of the house, just my wife and I and children. Each one had a suitcase. Now, most of our children at that time were either married or away to boarding school, and so that left my wife and me and 3 youngest children free to go where we wanted to go and do what we wanted to do. So I accepted an invitation to go to old Mexico, south of the border of Texas, and run a 22-bed hospital, a beautiful brand new building. Dr. Juan Mejia built it, and he dedicated it to the work of the Bible and spirit of prophecy in relation to health, to help people to live better. So we just got in the car. I drove the car, I drove the truck. My wife drove the car with the children, and in the truck we had very few belongings, and had to take my wife's piano. She was a piano teacher. She taught all my children to play music. I'm the only one in the family who doesn't know how to play, and I appreciate Marvella's playing the piano. It reminds me so much of the beautiful piano playing of my wife. Anything that was printed on paper in the line of music, she could sit down and play it. She taught her children to play. I'm the only one in the family that didn't learn. I was too busy. I was a mason contractor for a while, building houses, and worked 14 hours a day on the job in order to support 10 people. But thank God for the privilege of giving. And this is what I want to tell you about today. that my wife and I, after working in Mexico for 10 years, running the hospital, we went to Colombia, South America, and for 8 years ran a floating hospital, a large boat on several rivers. Actually, I navigated 32 different rivers and visited 70 villages and 7 tribes of Indians. And I did dental work and physical work, and to win the confidence of the people, I actually did welding. I had on the big boat, a beautiful, well-furnished boat. I had 3 different welding outfits. I had Stateline welding for brass. I welded up bicycles. I had another gas outfit for welding aluminum. And I rebuilt the propellers on the back of the boats. The people that I worked with were fishermen, because I was traveling up and down different rivers. And then I had welding, electric welding for steel and cast iron and so on. And all just to win the confidence of the people. I was a master electrician. I'd come into a village, a poor fisherman, where the government had furnished like an electric generator to light up the village, but the people, natives, didn't understand mechanical work, and after the newness of the generator run out, why, the people lived without electricity again because they didn't know mechanics. So when I came into a village and I found out they had a generator that wasn't running, I would rebuild the generator and rewire the houses and fix up their burned out fuses and cut the limbs off the trees that were shorting out the electric wires going from house to house. And in that way I'd win the confidence of the people, and then they were ready to open up their life and their heart and present their bodies as to be healed and cured and treated on. And so we spent 8 years running this floating hospital in South America. We had lots and lots of experience. I've actually, by the grace of God, spent 40 years outside of the United States. I'm actually a stranger in my own country. But I love the Lord. I love to do things to help people. And our scripture today was, it's more blessed to give than to receive. I want to show you how God will bless us when we give. You know the text in Malachi 3. God said, ye have robbed me. And the people said, how did we rob you? And he said, in tithes and offerings. And the tithe is a required part. The offering is a volunteer part. But God loves a cheerful giver. It is more blessed. Jesus himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. So I'm going to tell you spiritually what God can do for a cheerful giver. My wife and I, after spending 10 years in Old Mexico and 8 years in South America, a total of 18 years, I was administrator and doctor of a hospital, the land hospital and then the floating hospital. After spending our time in Colombia, South America, my wife and I, during that time, came back to the United States just for a visit to see our children we hadn't seen in years, and to visit some of our friends and travel around and tell some of the Adventist churches the blessings that God had given us while working in foreign fields. And my daughter happened to be living in Corinth, Mississippi, and so my wife and I came in to Atlanta airport from South America, and she lived in Corinth, and Dr. Bill Palmer, a dentist, was the elder of the Corinth church, and he said, "Calvin, I'm glad to see you here. I'd love to have you take the sermon today and give a mission report." And so I told about different experiences I'd had in different countries, and I happened to tell about down in Colombia, South America, out of every 1,000 people we visited, we found only one person had a Bible. And I gave that report on Sabbath in Corinth, Mississippi, and after church, a little old lady, 84 years old, met me out in the foyer, and she said, "Brother Dence, my husband and I have always wanted to do some kind of missionary work. We're not wealthy, but we'd like to make a sacrifice, and we'd like to give some money so that you could buy some Bibles and give them to the people in South America when you go back." We spent just 1 month in the United States and then went back to South America, and she handed me $500. "I want you to buy Bibles, give it to the people." I put my hands behind my back. I said, "I won't even touch that money unless you give me permission to use it like God directs that I use it." And did God ever direct? My, oh my. She said, "Take the money, it's yours, you use it like God directs you." So we went back to South America, and I went to the conference office and said, "I want $500 worth of Bibles to give to the people." They said, "We don't have one Bible." The reason was, you have heard about the drug traffic out of Colombia, South America, affecting the United States. And so the United States had put sanctions on the Colombian people, the country of Colombia. And sanctions means they were not able to sell anything to the United States, and they were not able to buy anything from the United States. You have no idea what a hardship it is for a country to have sanctions put upon it. I was there. I saw it. I felt it. I suffered through it. You have no idea how many thousands of people depend, in foreign countries, depend on buying things from the United States and selling it to make a living. All kinds of grocery stores and clothing stores, dry goods stores, and so on, all had to close up and go out of business because of sanctions of the United States. The people suffer. And my wife and I, as missionaries, suffered along with them because we couldn't buy things we had to buy. Anyway, I went to the conference office. They had no Bibles. If they had a Bible, it would have been $5 each. What a blessing that they had no Bibles. Because somebody said, "Brother Dence, why don't you go to the American Bible Society here in Bogota, Colombia?" Bogota is a city of 7 million people back then. I don't know what it is today. But I said, "I didn't know the American Bible Society in Colombia." I said, "I will look it up." I did. My wife and I took the bus and went over there. And anxiously, I asked him, "Do you have the full King James Bible printed in the Spanish language? They said, yes, we do. Wow, I said, good. I said, where did you get them? They said they were printed in Canada. Canada didn't have sanctions on Colombia, so they were able to buy Bibles from Canada, Spanish Bibles. I said, wow, how much are they? And they said, a box full of 100 will cost you $200. That's $2 a piece. Then they said, before I could speak anything else, they said, but if you buy a box full today, I'm telling you folks about a miracle of God. They said, if you buy a box today, we will give you another box. Then better than that, they said, if you buy Bibles today, we will ship them any place in the country at our expense. Now, that was a blessing to us because my wife and I lived 3 days away by bus and by horse cart and everything else to get to the jungle where our boat was. We lived on this hospital boat. The boat was half as big as this room. It was 65 feet long, 18 feet wide, and 2 stories high. And we actually treated people. I did dental work and medical work. Anyway, so I bought $500 worth of Bibles at $1 a piece. That's 500 Bibles. And then God continued the miracle. When we got back to our boat, we went, put the Bibles were there waiting for us. They had sent them ahead on a bus ahead of us, and the Bibles are there at the bus station, 500 Bibles, and we hired a sori. Do you know what a sori is? It's a 2-wheeled cart pulled by a donkey. A man walks along beside the donkey to lead the cart. And so they put our baggage, our suitcases, and the boxes of Bibles on the sori and took it 2.5 miles down to the river where my hospital boat was. And so the next day we started downriver to do our medical missionary work. And we made one trip every year. We traveled, our main river was the Meta, M-E-T-A, Meta River, and then that's in Colombia, and then the Orinoco River in Venezuela. And so we went the full length of both of those rivers, and we would travel half a year on the south side of the rivers, and then we'd come back half a year on the north side of the rivers, one trip every year. As we went, I did not, and you remember Sister Swenson was the one that gave me the $500. I told her I won't even take it unless you let me use it like God directs. So the way God directed was, I did not give them the Bible. I sold it for $1, the same as I paid for it. The people could not afford a $5 Bible, but they could and would and did afford a $1 Bible. At the end of the year, listen folks, how God works. At the end of the year, my 500 Bibles were gone, but I still had $500 in my hand. I went back to Bogota and got $500 more Bibles. I did it every year for 5 years. 2,500 people had Bibles, and I still had the $500. I'm going to tell you about that. I mean, when God works, He does a good job of it. And now, what happened about the $500, I'll tell you in a few minutes. I called I think I wrote a letter to Sister Swenson. I said, I handled the money the way God directed and the way you gave me permission. And 2,500 people have Bibles, but I got a problem. I still got the $500. And I said, what should I do with it? And she wrote back and said, you use it in the way God directs. You use it for yourself. You've deserved it, and you use it. So I just tucked it away. Now I'm going to tell you what happened to that in a few minutes. We made one trip every year downriver to help the sick people. And I never went to dental school a day in my life. I never pulled or filled or made a tooth in front of an instructor. But Ellen White, I believe it's Testimonies to the Church, Volume 5, page between 81 and 87. It says that God can teach you more in a moment by the Holy Spirit than what you can learn from all the educational institutions in a lifetime. Amen. So I took advantage of that statement, and somebody had a cavity in a tooth, and okay, I pulled the tooth. And then I started pulling hundreds and thousands of teeth. And then I looked at the teeth and I said, my, oh my, if I could only fill those teeth, I wouldn't have to pull them. The people could save them. So I set up my own laboratory. I went to a hardware store and bought some plaster of Paris. And when I pulled a tooth, I would clean it up, and then I would mix up a little plaster of Paris in a little cup, and I'd set the tooth in there, and then I'd practice filling teeth. So I would go to a dental supply place, and I would buy material to fill teeth with, standard material, and I would fill it, and then I'd take a hacksaw and cut it in half. I'd take a hammer and break another tooth and inspect it with a microscope to see if I did a good job and see if I got all the decayed material out before I filled it, and train myself to fill teeth. And after filling teeth, I thought, my oh my, these teeth that have rotten roots are dead. I don't have to pull those. I could do root canals. So I started doing root canals. And then I felt sorry for these people that had to have a lot of teeth out because they had lots of rotten teeth. And so I thought it'd be nice if, after pulling the teeth, if I could make some partial plates. And so the way I learned, the way God showed me how to learn was in Colombia on the Venezuela, on the Orinoco River. I went to a little village of Casuarito across from Ayacucho, Venezuela, and there's a young dentist that had water skis, and I had, on my big hospital boat, I had a lifeboat with a 30-horse outboard motor. I figured now if we could only get together, we could go water skiing. And so I spent a half hour talking to the young dentist about water skiing. So we made a date in a few days. He would furnish the skis, and I'd furnish the boat. We'd go water skiing. During that half hour I was talking with him, he started and finished a partial plate. And when I got done talking, it was 9 o'clock at night, and when we got done talking, I said, I picked up 9 things off his table. I said, can I borrow these? He looked at me. kind of funny. He didn't ask what you're going to do with it. He just kind of looked at me funny and shook his head, yes. So I picked up an armful of 9 things, 9 o'clock at night. I went back to my hospital boat, got my sailor boy out of bed. He was missing one front tooth. I took an impression and sent him back to bed. And I stayed up until 1 o'clock in the morning. I made a partial plate with one tooth in it that fit perfect in the morning. So, talk about God teaching you. I mean, he's a good teacher. And so, the next morning, when the dental office was open, I took my sailor boy with me and went back with the 9 products in my arms and set them down on the table in his office. He looked at me kind of funny, so, well, what'd you do with them? Instead of answering him, I just turned around and told my sailor boy to open his mouth. I pulled a impression out, that partial plate, and showed it to him. He said, "You little rascal, I spent $20,000 and 4 years in college learning how to do that, and you learned in 1/2 hour." Anyway, I made lots and lots of partial plates since then, up to 7 teeth in 1 partial plate. And I did oral surgery, just a little bit of everything that has to do with the mouth. But God is good. I'm having to slow down a little bit because I can't see anymore. I don't trust myself to do dental work to get all of that decay out of that little cavity. So I have to slow down on that. But there's other things to do. We don't have to sit down and waste time. There's plenty of things to do. God is anxious to use us. But I thought you'd enjoy hearing how if we turn to God and let Him guide us and teach us, and I appreciate the Sabbath school lesson this morning, that who was it that said, let go and let God? Let go and let God. I mean, like we studied in the Sabbath school lesson, we're trying to do everything ourselves and leave God out. We can't do that. We've got to have God on our side. We've got to have Him in our heart. We've got to have Him in our mind. And we've got to have Him on our lips to share with people. One of the greatest joys I've ever had was sharing with people. And I often like to tell, when I tell children's stories, I tell how God guides, directs, and protects, and
mafia.
And what?
How about the mafia?
I can't hear you. Anyway.
You're going to tell them about the mafia.
Mafia.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Thank you. I almost forgot that. Traveling down the river every year, 1 trip per year, the drug mafia got threatened. Every night I was showing, do you know what a 16 millimeter movie projector is? It was an old Bell and Howell Jan, J-A-N, projector made for the U.S. Navy to teach their sailor boys. Anyway, I had this Jan projector. I had 5 or 6 rolls of film, 16 millimeter, the birth of Jesus, the death of Jesus, the Acts of the Apostles, the prodigal son, and then I had rolls of film on against smoking, against drinking, and against drugs. Every night I had from 40 to 300 people sitting on the bank of the river watching me project on the white wall these movies. And the drug mafia felt threatened that I was teaching people not to use drugs. 40 to 300 people every night. And so 4 times they sent human beings on foot to confront me and tell me if I come downriver again, they're going to kill me and my wife. Well, I just figured that God's bigger than they are. And I wasn't scared. So the next year, we got on a boat and started downriver, just like usual. It's nice to have God on your side. What I didn't know was that even though I had faith to believe that God would take care of me, God knew that these guys were determined and they were going to wipe me out. So halfway downriver, that last year, the 8th year that we were there, I got a terrible fever. I'd never had much fever before, except when I was 7 years old. I told you I had typhoid fever, pneumonia, and infantile paralysis. But anyway, I got this fever. It would not go away. My wife had doctors come and see me and examine me. They did all kinds of examination. They proved that I did not have typhoid fever. The doctors proved that I did not have malaria. And they proved that I did not have tuberculosis or anything like that. But they could not prove what I did have. And finally I figured it out myself. I was dying of a broken heart. I had this big hospital boat. It originally belonged to the conference down there in the Alta Magdalena, in Bogota, Colombia. The boat was given to them by a Seventh Adventist cattleman. They raised cattle. And he saw the need of a medical missionary boat. He came back to the United States, had the boat built, and he risked his life to navigate the boat down to Colombia, South America, up the Meta River. And one day, he was 72 years old. He fell in the river, got water in his lungs, filthy, dirty water, and was very sick, was in the hospital. He called for the elders to pray for him and anoint him, and he died. And he gave the boat to the conference. They tied it up to a tree for 7 years and hired a man to guard it. They paid him to guard that boat 24 hours a day. The poor man almost went insane. When he had to leave to go to town to buy groceries, people would come in and steal stuff. And anyway, they paid 7 years to guard that boat. When I saw it, my wife and I visited Colombia. We stood on the bridge and I saw the boat about 500 feet upriver, tied to a tree. Been there 7 years. What a crime. It was donated for the purpose of using it as a medical missionary hospital. When I stood there talking to the pastor that introduced me to the boat, a pastor from the conference, I looked at my wife and I said, "There's my future hospital," just like that. And I ended up 3 years later, I got all the paperwork done. I applied to Colombia, South America to become a medical missionary. Well, Colombia is very, very Catholic. They didn't want Protestant missionaries in Colombia, so they denied my application. I said, okay, God has a better way. So I knew that that boat had a Series 53 Detroit diesel engine in it. I knew that to maintain that boat, I had to do mechanical work. So I came back to the United States and bought a big, thick catalog, a Series 53 diesel engine, and studied it. Got some other diesel mechanic information. Went back to Colombia, South America, and applied to enter the country as a diesel mechanic. I mean, God always has a better way. So they accepted my application. So my wife and I were in, and I had to spend 6 months to get my license as a riverboat captain, and I got that, and a good thing I did, because my logbook had 3,500 hours of navigating that boat. That was in my logbook. And anyway, we had marvelous experiences, God guiding and directing all the way. And then back to the story about I determined to go down the river in spite of the threat to be killed. And I got this heavy fever. The reason I had the fever, I finally figured it out later, was that family back home promised to support us. The church promised to support us. Private individuals promised to support us. The conference down in Colombia had good intentions to support us, but after we were there 8 years, after 6 months, we never got any support from anybody. Everybody forgot us. The conference didn't want anything to do with this boat anymore. They gave it to me, $350,000 boat, completely furnished, dental material, dental machinery, and welding machinery, chainsaws, tools, lifeboat, projectors, everything. They said, look, we can't afford this boat. You can either quit and go home, or you can take the boat and go on your own. That's fine, but who's going to pay for it? So God finally helped me figure out a way to pay for it. I've always been very mechanical minded, and I like to do things. I like excitement and experiences. So I learned that a lot of the farmers along the river in Colombia had land on both sides of the river. But in 2,000 miles, there's only one bridge. How do you get your tractor from this side to that side of your farm when you're downriver? So I learned this boat. I wish I had a picture of it for you. The front end, the deck of my boat on the front end was from where I sat to navigate the boat on the second floor to the front of the boat was 24 feet, and the boat was 18 feet wide. So 18 by 24, I mean, that's like from me to the wall and 18 feet wide, 24 feet long. I went to a sawmill. I got 4 heavy planks, like 4 inches thick and 12 inches wide and 12 feet long. I used 2 of those to put on the deck so I wouldn't scratch up my paint, and I used 2 of them to go up on the land and down to the planks on the front of the boat. And I became a ferry boat, taking farmers' tractors across from this side of the river to that side so they could harvest their crops, their cotton or soybeans or whatever they were growing, rice. They grow a lot of rice in Colombia. And so I was able to make money enough to pay for the diesel fuel and to buy our food by ferry boating tractors. The biggest tractor I ever took was a D10 Caterpillar, and the boat handled it very nicely. I had a space 18 feet wide and 24 feet long. I just put the planks down, so there's a metal deck on it, so I didn't want to mar up the metal. So I put the planks down to run the track on with a Caterpillar tractor, and then the heavy planks to take it from the land to the boat and go across to the other side. It only took about a half hour to do the whole operation, and they'd pay $50 or $60, equivalent to American money. And that was enough to buy my diesel fuel and so on. And we just had tremendous experiences. Now, getting back to the $500, and the drug mafia threatened to kill us, I'm sure there was God that stopped us from going farther downriver. God could see them sitting there licking their chops and just waiting for us to come by and kill us. So God stopped me with the fever, and I was 90 days with that fever. I could not leave my bedroom. It was up on the second floor, and my wife, and every year I took 2 new boys and 2 new girls, 4 students that I trained to be medical missionaries. Many of those today have their own office and doing the medical missionary work that we taught them to do. And so my wife and the 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, had been praying for me all of this time. And this particular day, the first time in 90 days that I left my bed and went down, when I got there, they were kneeling in the middle of the, what you'd call the living room, and they were praying, and they had fasted 3 days and 3 nights, and water only, and were praying for me. I just walked in, I knelt down beside them, and only once since. That would be about 1988. Only once I've had a fever since. God took my fever away, but I told my wife, we've lost 3 months. We cannot go down river anymore. We've got to turn around and go back, because in January 15, the river dries up and there's no more water deep enough to run a big boat until April 15. So I said, we've got to get back before the river dries up. So I turned around, we went back, not knowing if I had gone a little bit farther, they were there prepared to kill us. And when they saw us turn back, I didn't know this until later, when they saw us turn back, they thought we were scared of them. So they followed us. 60 guerrilla soldiers sent by the drug mafia to get rid of us. And so they followed us back, and after about 6 or 7 days, we finally got back to our home port and parked the boat. I took the children, the young people, up to the bus station and sent them home to their parents. And my wife and I did something we'd never done before. We'd been there 8 years and never stayed in a motel. I said, we're tired. It was after dark we got back. We were 3 months ahead of time coming back, and nobody in the village knew that we were back, except the guy in the bus station. And I sent the children home. My wife and I got a motel room and stayed overnight. A motel there cost $1.50 a night. And anyway, at midnight, I felt very uncomfortable. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to get a friend of mine with a Jeep, have him take us out of here to a long-distance bus station. And she was always cooperative. She agreed with me. That boat, worth $350,000, was my boat and everything on it, but I had to walk off and leave it. We got this Jeep to take us to the long-distance bus station. We took a bus 2,000 miles It took us 2,000 miles away, from way down almost on the Amazon River to northern Colombia, to I was scared to take an airplane home to the United States because an airplane can be tracked. So I called New York City, the Allison Lakes steamboat company, and asked them if they had a boat going from Colombia to Miami. They said yes. In about 2 weeks, got a boat coming out of Santiago, Chile, coming through the Panama Canal, and they're going to stop in, I guess, Cartagena, it's northern Colombia. And anyway, we were there. They stopped and got us. And I asked them how much it cost. They said $500. The end of the story is, I got word from the conference person we left at midnight, left the boat and everything behind. And 3 o'clock in the morning, 60 guerrilla soldiers found that my boat was locked up. They knew we had to be in a village. They came and got 3 o'clock in the morning, got the mayor of the town out of bed, demanded that he turn us over to them. He didn't know we were back. He was innocent. We came back after dark, 3 months ahead of time. God knew what he was doing. We were obedient, and God worked it out. They killed the mayor of town. They went to the chief of police, got him out of bed, demanded that he turn us over to them. He didn't know we were back. They killed him. They killed 30 other people. 32 innocent people died just because God allowed us to escape. And the $500 saved our lives. That dear sister in Corinth, Mississippi, gave $500 for Bibles. They bought 2,500 Bibles, and it saved our life. God bless each one of you.